Hello, everybody. Sorry I kept you waiting a few minutes. I'm having to do this meeting on my phone because I was having trouble with the computer. It wouldn't let me get on. Anyway, as you know, I have a script, the right to know script that I have to share with everyone. So I'll start with that and say, welcome. I am Senator Martha Fuller Clark. Today, we will be conducting a remote meeting of the Commission to Study Child Hunger in New Hampshire. Before we get started, I'm going to read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting that we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that 1, we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selected legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom, YouTube, and via phone by following the directions and links provided on the General Court website. 2, we have provided public notice of the necessary information for assessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. 3, we are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are any problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remote-senate@ledge.state.nh.us or call 603-271-3043. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. 5, please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. And finally, now it is going to be time to take that roll call attendance. And you are asked to declare where you are and if anyone else is in the room with you during this meeting, as required under the right to know law. So I can call the roll, and I will start with Claire Bloom.
Thank you. My name is Claire Bloom. I'm the Volunteer Executive Director and founder of End 68 Hours of Hunger. I'm calling from my home. My husband is in the home, but not in the room.
Great. Mary Jane Wallner.
I'm Mary Jane Waltner. I'm at home in my home in Concord, New Hampshire, and my husband is in another room, but not with me in this room.
Laura Milliken.
Hi, I'm from New Hampshire Hunger Solutions, and I'm in Concord, and there is no one else in the room with me.
Elise Bolster.
Hi everyone, it's Elise Bolster, the Nutrition Programs Manager here at the New Hampshire Food Bank. I am in my office and I am alone.
Mary Lou Beaver.
Hi, I'm Mary Lou Beaver. I'm the Director of the Children's Place and Parent Education Center in Concord. I am in my office in Concord, and there are children and staff in other rooms, but no one in my office with me at this time.
Thank you. Rebecca Wachowski.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Wojkowski. I'm the Kids Count Policy Coordinator at New Futures, and I am at home with my 2 children in Bedford.
Thank you. Susan Wunk.
Hi, I'm Susan Winnook from Community Action Program Belknap Merrimack Counties. I'm at my office in Concord, New Hampshire, and no one else is in the office with me.
Thank you. And I'm Senator Martha Fuller Clark, and I'm at my home in Portsmouth, and I am alone for the time being. So I believe we've fulfilled the obligation of announcing ourselves to each other and to the public. And the first thing that we need to do is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. And let me see if I can do this. Okay, I don't know if you all have those minutes. I just got them from Jen. So does any, and I'm not seeing you on my phone because I'm just looking at the screen with the minutes on it. But does anyone have any questions or concerns, or would you like us to wait till the next meeting to approve these minutes?
So this is Susan Winnock. I do have a correction. The reference to the Wic Farmers Market nutrition program should say that we wouldn't be using EBT cards, and that the state would be reapplying for the Wic Farmers Market funds. I can send the correction to Claire if you would like that.
And I do need someone to be taking minutes today. Is there anyone who's willing to volunteer?
I can do that with Susan.
Thank you very, very much, Susan. I appreciate it.
And Susan, rather than sending them to me, Jennifer actually has the minutes. so
Yeah,
you
that's
could
right. So
send them
just
to her.
send the correction to Jennifer, okay?
I will
Does
do that.
anybody have any other changes, commissions, additions? Okay, then I would like to have a motion to approve the minutes.
I so
Someone-
move, Claire.
Thank you,
Second.
Claire. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Is that Mary Jane?
Yeah, it's Mary Jane.
Okay, great. Okay. Everyone in favor, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Bye.
Okay. And is there anyone opposed?
Senator, I'm sorry, we have to take a roll. I apologize.
Oh,
I'm
you know,
sorry.
I did this morning too. I'm so sorry.
No
At the other
problem.
meeting. I know that. Okay, so we have to go back and do the roll, I just need to call this is very hard. Okay. Let me do it this way. Okay,
Senator, do you want me to? I would be happy to call the roll.
that would be great.
Okay. So Senator Fuller Clark,
Yes.
Representative Wallner,
Yes.
Susan Winnock,
Yes, I'm here.
Laura Milliken,
Yep.
Mary Lou Beaver,
Yes.
Elise Bolster,
Yes.
Claire Bloom,
Yes.
and Rebecca Wachowski.
Yes.
Okay, so all in favor then.
And I need to let you know that I've heard from Maureen and from Sherry White that they're not able to be here today. Was there anyone else, Jen, who let you know that they wouldn't be able? I know that Susan has to get off perhaps before we end, but maybe we'll end before that. So was there anyone else that we heard from?
So yes, we did hear from Joy Barrett that she wouldn't be able to attend, as well as Maureen Burke and Bill Sherry.
Okay, great. All right. So we can just note that they responded to let us know they would be unable to attend. So what I wanted to start with was to see if there's anyone or several of you who would like to share with the others about the New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation and their webinar, which several of us were able to attend the day after we met 2 weeks ago. So does anyone have anything to share? I can hardly remember it. There's been so much going on, so that's okay. What I would like to raise is that I did get this information about the foundation. And I thought it was pretty interesting because they have grant programs and they actually are willing to fund programs out of state agencies. So when we've sort of been looking for dollars, is that not another place to go? And so I'm happy to follow up with Gail Garceau. I just didn't do that for the meeting today, for which I apologize. But one of their whole purposes is to address such things as child nutrition, child obesity. And so I think it would be worth having some of you look into that and see if there is a way that could be significant. So other thoughts? Quiet group here.
The New Hampshire Food Bank applied, I'm trying to look for the date here. I think it was just in 2019, we got awarded funding from the New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation for the summer food service program that we sponsor here in the state. And they were a great partner in, supporting some of our budget for the summer meals program. So I encourage it.
So I was thinking, if we're trying to get some funding for marketing, would that not possibly be a place to talk to them, or about being able to get some funding to put up a website so that we can reach out to more parents and to more schools to get them engaged and enrolled? And this seems more paramount now with the announcements that have come out in the last week, given that there will be free food, free breakfast and lunch for children up through June of 2021. And maybe someone could talk a little bit more about that announcement, which came out last week, during which was Child Nutrition Week, National School Lunch Week. And Trump announced that they would provide a continued extension of the nationwide flexibilities that allow free school meals for all children throughout the entire 2020-2021 school year. So, but our issue has been, and I'm sorry that Chair is not here, but maybe Laura and Susan can speak to this, but we have this issue of how do we get this information out, and how are we able to have schools make those food programs available to families with children?
So, Senator, this is Susan.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm interested in doing is I participate on a Upper Valley Hunger Coalition, and many of the members are from Vermont, even though there are some New Hampshire representatives. And it seems like Vermont has done a good job at figuring this whole thing out about how to serve children that are not in school. So perhaps there might be somebody in Vermont that could talk with us about how they've gone about doing this.
Sure. So
a map.
if you could find out and
will.
see if they would be willing to join our Zoom program 2 weeks from, well, we don't want to do it 2 weeks from now, but maybe it'll have to be 3 weeks from now, because that's the day after the election. And normally we're scheduled to meet the day of the election. I don't think anybody wants to do that. I don't. And see if it would be possible for them to come. And maybe there's someone from Maine too. How Maine does a lot better than we do.
I don't have a contact in Maine.
Okay, well, maybe I could. But that would be great. I think that's a terrific idea, or at least, but I think we would like to meet with someone on the Zoom meeting so that we can ask questions. It's one thing to send us information, but it's something else to be able to just talk about it. And I was also thinking maybe it would be worthwhile to ask Gail Garceau to come and talk to us about what their foundation, the Children's Health Foundation, does and how they might be able to assist us in addressing the issue of child hunger in New Hampshire. Does that seem like two reasonable approaches?
I think that makes a lot of sense, Martha, to
Okay.
ask
Okay.
Gail to come and talk with us.
Yeah. So that if you, Susan, can let me know what kind of success you have with Vermont. And I will see what kind of success I can have in tracking down someone from Maine, because we're not like the other big states. We know that our population is comparable to Maine. We know that Vermont's a lot smaller, but they also have the same, both of those states have the same issues with primarily their rural districts. And so I think it would be helpful. So my question is, Susan, is you were talking about the need to get the $10,000 match to bring the Wic Farmers Market Nutrition Program back. Do you think that, and I don't know, I suggested maybe you talk to someone at the Department of Agriculture, but I don't know if you think it's also worthwhile pursuing this Children's Health Foundation.
So I did talk to my state director at the Wic program, and she said that the Department of Agriculture, we talked about this, that they probably did not have funds to support this, and that we would, and I talked to her about if they could accept foundation money as a match, and she said they could. So that would be an excellent idea. If we could apply to the Children's Health Foundation to see if they could support this. She was looking at federal fiscal year 22, because obviously we're in federal fiscal year 21, which would mean not next summer, but the following summer for program, the way I understand it. So, but it will take securing the match in order for them to apply for it.
Susan, I have a question for you about that match. So the $10,000 that we're talking about, what specifically would that $10,000 be used for?
I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's probably used for the administration of the program, because I believe that USDA, if it's similar to Senior Farmers Market, which our agency administers, the majority of the funds that we get are for food dollars, and there's a very small admin portion to it. That's about 10%. I think ours is actually a little bit less than 10% of the total grant award. But with farmers market, Senior Farmers Market, they do allow they do provide the admin funds. So I'm not really clear why the Wic Farmers Market doesn't provide the match funds for the admin. But I can check into that and get specific information from.
I think that would be very helpful. It's hard to go and ask someone
Yeah.
when we're not even able to tell them what we need it for. So it seems to me right now that we have two outreach issues. One has to do with the EBT cards used at farmers markets for the WIC nutrition program. And the other has to do with finding a way to reach out to our schools and get more of our schools to participate in the breakfast lunch program, particularly now that all the meals for this entire year are going to be free for everyone. And it's very helpful in the sense that it relieves a lot of bureaucracy. It takes away the stigma. And we should find a way to bring more schools into the program. But as I understand it from when we were talking before, that we don't have the capacity to be able, the department doesn't, to be able to reach out to these schools and the parents and engage them. And what it looks like, even if your school doesn't participate, that you can go to another school, correct me if I'm wrong, and get the food that you need there. So is that my correct understanding?
My understanding is that the waiver allows schools to feed all kids who appear. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
You see, it's a couple things. It's not easy for a child to just simply decide to go to another school to go for lunch. That is not going to happen. So I mean, that waiver program is great, but it doesn't exactly fit in with what we're talking about. But Sherry sent out a message. I'm sorry she's not here, but it's Sherry, right? Sherry White.
Yes.
Had a
And
message.
I have that too. Yes.
Right. And said that some of the schools don't think they have any children in need. And my experience with N68 Hours of Hunger, and I'm sure Laura and everybody else's experience is, yeah, you go to a lot of people and they don't think they have anybody in need. And the reality is they all have people in need and they just don't know about it. So the question in terms of how do we let them know, A, that yes, they do have children in need, even though they may not be directly aware of it, and B, this is available to them, and C, these are the steps they need to take in order to avail themselves of this opportunity. Those three pieces of information have to get out to the schools. Unfortunately, Sherry's the best person to do that because she's with DOE. So she's really the person who could best get that information to the schools. So I don't know who needs to talk to Sherry, and if somebody will give me Sherry's phone number, I'm happy to call Sherry and find out what that's
right. And she has been on these meetings before. She just couldn't come today.
Right.
So we can check back with her. And I guess it's one idea was to create. I know that Laura went and talked about creating a portal where people could go to learn about this program. Laura, could you talk about that?
Sure. So Don McKinney from Legal Assistance and I had a meeting with Maureen Burke at the suggestion of this committee. We suggested that there be something added to the COVID-19 website, the DHHS COVID-19 website, talking about sort of all the federal nutrition programs, as well as, food banks and UNH's great map. Maureen called me a couple of days later and said that DHHS didn't feel like it really had the capacity to be able to expand the website in that way.
And as I understand it, many of these departments are down in terms of staff, so that makes it more difficult. Is that correct?
I'm sure that's correct.
She didn't say that, but I know that that's true. Yeah.
But that's true. So, Mary Jane, is there some other way? I know that you were gonna get together with Laura and Maureen and Sherry and talk about what we might be able to do in terms of the gopher monies. There's still gopher monies there, right?
Very, very little at this point. And Laura, I haven't gotten together with them, but I have talked to Laura a couple of times about it. I think if we were going to do something, we need to put together a proposal pretty quick. Because
Yeah,
there isn't much left. I think there's probably only 100 million left, which sounds like a lot, but there are still a lot of things that need to be addressed.
So I have no idea what it what would be the best way to be able to get this information out to schools and to parents. And but that's really the challenge. So the question is it through a website? Is it through a publicity campaign and press releases in the paper? Just announcing on the back, particularly now of this information that came out last week, that we could at least put together a press release to alert schools and families that there is free breakfast and lunch for the rest of the year for school-age children.
Yeah, just to be clear, Senator, the email from Sherry made it clear that there are schools who are not participating in the waivers, and so we need to be careful about what we say about who can access those meals.
Well, but I don't think we would be pointing out any particular schools. I just think that, I mean, my idea would be that we just, as I said, piggyback on the press release out of Washington and point out that, you know, this program now allows for free breakfast and free lunch, and that parents should check with their schools as to how they go about having access to those free meals. And I'm certainly happy to run this idea by Sherry, and maybe it comes from the Department of Education, the press release. But that's not a terribly expensive way to at least sort of try to put this out into the public domain.
I think that's a good idea. I have a meeting with Sherry at the end of this week, and I'd be happy to bring that idea to her.
Okay, you know, and that's not going to cost us a lot of money, you know, and if ultimately, you know, there needs to be right now, how do parents find out about the free and reduced lunch program at schools that have it? Do they get sort of a notice or a request at the beginning of the year if they want to sign up for it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So could those schools, I mean, the other issue is, well, I'll come back to that, but if schools could at least, you know, put out a notice that goes home to the parents of the kids and point out to them that they don't have to really sign up, right? Except I think they probably need to sign up so you know how many kids are going to actually need to be fed.
I think the problem is that the schools themselves are not doing this, that the schools themselves in many cases don't think they have a problem.
Right. But it would certainly, I mean, they are providing meals at their schools. It would certainly help the bottom line in their budget if they didn't have to pay for those meals. I mean, we're not even talking about that they don't think that they have a problem. I mean, this is for all kids. This isn't just, you know, people of a certain income. So I don't, I mean, do we talk to the superintendents and the various SAUs to see if there's some way to draw attention to this. I mean, it's quite, substantial change. All as a result of COVID. It won't necessarily exist another year, but we're just going to not take advantage of it, seems, and that families and children can't take advantage of it, given that we know that we do have, child hunger and nutrition problems in the state, even if people don't want to acknowledge it. But just, what does a school breakfast program cost? What does a school lunch program cost? If they don't have to pay for that food, that's ought to be a considerable savings.
Yeah, and Sherry said in her email that there was a tiny number of schools who are not participating in the waivers, but certainly there are some.
And so if they are participating in the waivers, will they automatically know that now this program has been extended till June of 2021?
I'm sure Sherry has sent out notices in that regard. And there are a whole range of waivers. So, while schools are participating in some of the waivers, whether they're doing the area eligibility waiver that would allow for universal meals, I'm not sure.
Not sure. Well, maybe.
I know many of them are, but some of them may not.
But certainly that's a question to ask her, and maybe she can, at our next meeting, let us know if she has sent out a notice or is planning to send out a notice as a result of the announcement that came out of Washington last week. So that would just be another important question to ask her. So the other question that I have is, I will need to file a brief report since we haven't had that many meetings, but I'd like to know if you have any legislative recommendations for the coming year that I should put into the report that you think around the whole issue of child hunger, and the commission itself does not have to be reauthorized. It continues until 2022. But I'm just wondering if there are suggestions that you would like to see go forward in the form of legislation.
I've got two. I think, and I know we've done this before, and I know it got disapproved, but I think it's appropriate to discontinue raising it. And that is the suggestion that all schools in New Hampshire offer free breakfast and free lunch to all students. And again, I know that was not able to be funded, and you did the best you could to get some of the offset for those families that were paying for those lunches. But the second thing is, when we consider that healthcare costs and housing costs seem to be the biggest drivers behind economic inequity in the state, that and I know this is really outside the box and completely probably inconceivable, but what if we proposed legislation that said 80% of all new construction had to be low-income housing? Ask for the moon. I'm asking for the moon.
Other people's thoughts? I mean, certainly, requesting the state to ante up is a way to keep this issue out in front of the public and in front of legislators. We know that we're going to have a very challenging budget, but certainly we could recommend that as a recommendation and see if there's a legislator who wants to pick it up. I, as you know, will not be there, but I can talk to some other people, and we would have to, I have some of the information from when we tried to do this originally, what was the cost. So that's, I think, at least worth pursuing, even if we realize we might not get much. But I do think that we can talk about, by just having provided free breakfast to those with, were in that middle income area, that we know that we increased the number of young people participating in the program. So I think it was a good example of that the need is there, and that when it's put forth appropriately, it's accessed, and certainly we can talk about at this point, when we're worried about, lower middle income and low income families having lost their jobs, and we're probably not going to see a lot of those jobs come back, even though we've seen the unemployment rate drop. I think there's a lot of concern in terms of what's going to happen over the winter, particularly with our small retail stores and our restaurants, and could just, and why we haven't seen a huge wave of evictions, people are worried that that's going to happen. If people aren't able to pay their rent, and not able to feed their families. So it all sort of ties in together. About the difficulty with the workforce housing requirement, it's just not as simple as demanding that, and I know from being involved with the density commission, looking at how we can encourage communities to, allow diversified housing, and within much more of the core of their communities, because that's really how people want to live. Older people want to live that way. They want to live in walkable communities. Younger people want to live in walkable communities and be able to take advantage of the various amenities. And we're just not able to build that kind of housing. And then we have the whole issue of what we've now learned about essential workers. And so, but I don't think that you can go so far as to mandate that. And right now, the problem is that construction costs have doubled as a result of COVID. You used to buy a 2x4 for $3, and now it's $7. And so it's making it just that much more costly for developers. So it puts more projects that might get built out of reach, because the cost of constructing them is so high.
Senator, this is Mary Lou. May I ask a question?
Yes.
The commission, how much longer is the commission set to be in effect?
2 more years.
Okay. Now I have another question and a thought. My thought is, we were successful with the breakfast, free and reduced breakfast, free breakfast. Looking to put in my thought, and this is just me personally, as an advocate, is that looking to put in any legislation that's going to have any FN to it, note to it for financial. This next legislative session is probably a surefire no-go.
Right, not going to go. Right.
Right. So if anything, we should be looking at the session, the second year session. But if we could form maybe a working group to be looking at the lunch piece of this and putting together data and building a public campaign around it to build support for this with legislators, with the public, with schools. We may have more of a chance of success with seeing something like that happen, in the next legislative session rather than
Right.
now.
I agree with you. I think that in the sense of putting anything forward right now that has dollars attached to it, we've heard that, and Mary Jane, you can talk to this too, but it's not as bad as the loss of revenue is not as bad as people thought it was going to be, but it's still going to be over $200 million. And we have, that's been a huge challenge, is how to absorb that. And new programs and new projects, I think just there isn't the bandwidth for them right now. We're still going to have to be seeing things being cut.
And what I would add to that, Martha, is that I think this is going to be a session where our work is going to be around trying to hold on to many of the things that we had in the budget, that we got in the budget that we're in, and be sure that they stay in the next budget. So, I mean, we still
I
probably
would
have to do.
agree. I know we're worried that they'll take the money out of the housing fund or the homeless dollars, or they'll go after some of the really important supportive programs that were put in place. The money that we're sending back to local communities could all evaporate. No.
Or the education, or the education
Or
money.
Asian, right, and
I mean,
that's a
that was
whole another.
$140 million of new money to offer education.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I
I
think that's going to be where we're going to need some advocacy. We're going to need to be sure that people are there, watching. It may be it may have been a very small dollar amount, but probably keeping an eye to be sure that no one is trying to take away
undercut the safety net that we've tried to build back up again a little bit.
Yeah, or even our reduced breakfasts that we got last time. I know it's a small amount of money, but
they'll look in
there will be looking at everything.
They will, absolutely. So we should be prepared, and I'll put it in the report, to defend the advances that were made by allowing reduced lunches to now be free. And I do think that understanding a little bit more also is, even if we could ultimately expand that program so there were free lunches for those who are paying a reduced price, would be another step going forward. And so I think we need to have the numbers and the figures and talk about, is that a different direction to go in? But then you're making sure that the children most in need and in partial need are getting 2 meals a day.
Senator, just to speak to Mary Lou's point about needing to sort of lay the groundwork for the next sessions, we've applied for a couple of grants, one to support some strategic planning around advocacy to prevent and reduce child and family hunger, and the other to do some messaging work to make sure that we're speaking in a way that is effective. So obviously, I don't know whether we'll get those. I am hopeful, but it is on our agenda to try to.
I think that's. I applaud you for doing that. I think that's very, very important. And so it seems to me, we want to protect the little advance that we made in providing free breakfast for those who qualified for reduced breakfast, that we want to look at how we could build on that program in the future and what would be the dollars that would be involved. Then it seems to me we need to look at how we can increase school participation um, in these programs that already exist. And I just have to rely on everyone together to try to sort of figure that out. But we did talk about, particularly promoting these free meals for this year by press release, and then seeing what else we might be able to do. And then the third thing that we were talking about was the funding for the WIC program, right? So is there anything else right now that people think that we should be at least addressing in the report?
Martha, one thing I was wondering about, which I don't think really aware of until this came up, about the free and all the children being able to have a free and reduced meal. And that there were actually school districts where they are not providing those meals for kids.
Mhm.
And I wonder, is there any way that we could encourage, is there any way of encouraging those communities?
I
To be
think we want to
sure.
find a way to incentivize them, right? But what I don't understand, why isn't enough of an incentive for this year that they don't have to pay for any of that food?
Right. And the other thing I don't quite understand is that for a lot of the school funding formulas, not just the meal programs, but a lot of the school funding formulas use free and reduced to distribute other types of funding to schools.
That's
So
true. And now they're not going to have that.
Well, I don't understand how. I guess I don't understand why that isn't an incentive.
So
Maybe Laura has some thoughts on this.
So my understanding, and the guidance isn't 100% clear yet, but schools will possibly be able to use their previous year's data. Since we all believe that the need is higher now, it makes some sense to encourage folks to apply for free and reduced, even though schools do not have to require those applications. The federal funding that flows from the free and reduced numbers, they're just, myriad programs that rely on data. So having accurate data is just critical.
Well, also the state adequacy formula includes.
Right. I was just going to say that it looks at the number of children that are on free and reduced lunch. No.
It almost feels like we need a campaign to get the schools to get the information, because that provides them with other types of funding, not just the meal program.
It's a shame that Brendan isn't here, because he could certainly speak to a part of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, what I heard him say last time was that the schools are panicked that they're not getting those applications because they need those data, to draw down Title I dollars and a whole range of other dollars. So I think that the schools would be willing. I think that we need to think about how to get the word out to families.
Right, because they're saying families need to go and request it and say, we know this program is out there and we want to participate. And why isn't our school participating? But I think they have lost sight of the fact, and I think it's really critical what was brought up, that this whole free and reduced lunch formula drives so many other things that happen, and maybe we could have greater clarity on that by someone. What are all of the other funding programs that look to the numbers, the data from free and reduced lunch to determine what they're going to fund or how they go about applying for grants using that data. So I don't know all the different programs that rely on that data. How would we be able to put together, not necessarily a comprehensive list, but a reasonable list?
I would think the Department of Education would be able to provide that kind of information for us.
Well, let's ask them. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but the other question I had is, we still don't have kids in school 5 days a week.
Mhm.
And in some cases, they're only going to school 1 day a week. So, then other schools are going 2 days a week, and the students are going 2 days a week, and they split them up, different grades going different days of the week. What happens to those kids when they're at home? Is the expectation that their families will go and pick up this food? I mean, there are families that can't do that, but I just, how does that food get to kids when
Schools
they're
are,
not in school?
So I think that that's a district by district situation. And I'm thinking that Sherry might have a better handle on that. I think that that's part of the difficulty, is each district is responsible for administering the program that works best for them. And then getting that information out to families is important. But I don't really know how it's working in each district. Say the food distribution is at a certain time, but kids are home, but parents might be, working part of the time. I don't really understand how it's all working. Is there kind of a hybrid where sometimes they can get meals in school, sometimes they can pick up a lunch if they're not in school that day, because some schools are on like a modified schedule where certain kids go on one day, they go to another.
Right.
I think it's also complicated right now.
This is, sorry to interrupt, but this is Rebecca, and I have 2 little kids in the Bedford School District, and I signed up to see what the process would be like to access the free breakfast and lunch in my district. And you have to utilize the Send Money to Schools webpage, and you have to put, a certain amount of money on the card to be able to order or reserve a meal for a remote student, or for the days that you're hybrid. And also the days that your child would be in school, you'd be picking their food options. And then the high school is open from 9 to 12. And so they have a drive-through that parents pick up the food per day that they have pre-reserved, that they're going to come and get food. So there's the little bit, I had an advocacy table, I think Mary Lou was on it with me maybe, where I talked about in some districts that being difficult for parents to be able to put money on a card, to be able to access a computer to reserve a meal. But that, and, I emailed some questions to the administrator in my district about that process. They weren't exceptionally helpful, really. But that's not how every district is doing it. But that's how the district that I live in is doing it.
yeah, what I'm hearing from schools is that a number of them are sending home meals on the alternate days with kids, certainly with kids who are eligible for free and reduced. I'm not sure, how broadly. I mean, Susan's absolutely right. It depends on the district. So they're all using different approaches.
So can I ask you, Rebecca, what if you were free or reduced? Do they already know that, or do you still have to access it? Because they can't require them. Well, for reduced, they can require the partial payment for lunch. But what about school breakfast? If there's funding for the school breakfast, how does that work, and how do people apply to pick up their meals if they're on free and reduced?
I don't know. So I know that they had sent out original information with registration about applying for free and reduced. And then in the bottom of the principal's notes that they send out every week, there was a notice about the waiver. And so I emailed about how do you access this, and I was given the information around, going and creating an account on Send Money to Schools, going through that app, and then reserving a pickup. So there was no like inquiry into whether or not I would qualify for free or reduced. It was just, these are the administrative steps you have to go through to reserve. So I don't know how that interfaces with the kids that they already know are free or reduced or not. I don't know if that's helpful, but it was an interesting process to go through.
Yeah, well, it's helpful in the sense of seeing, how it's being handled in one community, one school district. It certainly creates a conundrum.
Mhm.
So who is it? Is it Sherry that oversees this whole
Mhm.
program?
Yes. Yeah.
The waivers have to go through Sherry, yes.
Okay. So I just think we've come up with a lot of questions we want to ask her. So maybe, Susan, when you meet with her on Friday, you can
That was me, Laura.
tell her that she was missed.
Mhm.
We know she had something else she had to do, but we have a lot of questions for her. And then maybe then we'll take those questions at another time to the in Vermont.
Mhm.
Oh, Laura, right, okay. No. Well, it's all very provocative, and it's very frustrating too, I think, for everybody when you just think, this is what kids need to do well, to thrive, to be good students. They need to have adequate nutrition. And yet it seems it's very difficult to provide it. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. And particularly now, and we have no idea what's going to happen over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Are we going to see, ultimately, our school's going to start closing down again completely? But even then, there was, of course, it was April and May, and then June, but when schools were closed down, they still were providing food. But what we don't know is about those people who don't have transportation to come and pick up that food. No. Is there a van service that sometimes is used by a school to deliver it?
A lot of schools use their bus service.
I was going to
deliver.
say using their school buses to deliver it, right?
A lot of schools did do that, but even then the participation was, not what it usually is because parents couldn't necessarily be there to receive meals at the moment that they were. So.
Right.
So, excuse me, I do need to leave the call. I have the minutes so far. I don't know if someone could pick them up, but I am interested in working with a group to look at other information about how we can proceed on the free and reduced, and also just the National School Lunch Program in general, and looking at other models and things maybe other states have done that might give us ideas. So I'm willing and able, and I think Mary Lou, are you able to do that? So I don't know, Senator, if anybody else, but I just wanted to say that I am interested in doing that.
Well, that's great. So my question just before you go is, we could meet next Tuesday.
Mhm.
Doesn't give you a lot of notice, and see if Sherry would be available, and we just continue this conversation with her and try to get some more data, and then meet 2 weeks after that to hear from people from other states. Does that seem like a worthwhile thing to do?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I will put that in the calendar for next Tuesday, and I know that my terrific aide will get the information out. We'll get the minutes out from this meeting today so that all those questions that we've raised, Sherry will have a chance to look at. And if we hear that she can't come next Tuesday, then I think we'll just schedule that meeting for another time.
Martha,
Yeah,
this is Mary Jane. Is it possible to do it at some other time next Tuesday other than 1? Actually, I have a gopher meeting at 1 o'clock.
sure.
And we're starting to spend down the money, so.
Okay, so, we could do it next Wednesday. And I could do it earlier, or I could do it at 11 on Tuesday. People tell me what would work for them.
So would you like me to tell you what's open for Zoom so we can go from there?
Well, that's important. Yes, Alan, thank you.
So on Tuesday, we are the only opening. We have something at 8:30 in the morning, then we have something at 10, and then we have something at 1. So Wednesday would be better unless you guys want to meet later in the afternoon on Tuesday at like 3 o'clock. Wednesday is wide open though.
Well, let's meet next Wednesday. And you want to do 9, 9:30, 11? People tell me,
We could do 1. Oh,
yeah, we can do 1 on the 28th.
That's really hard for me because we have parent pickup and we don't allow parents in the center. So it's all on deck.
Well, let's meet at 11.
Yeah,
11.
that would work for me. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, that's what was, and Alan, you'll put us in.
Yep.
Okay, so now I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So move.
And we have to do it by roll call. So
Jen,
Jen,
would you like me to call a roll?
yeah,
Okay. Senator Fuller Clark,
yes.
Representative Wallner,
yes?
Susan Winook,
Yes.
Laura Milliken,
Yes.
Elise Bolster,
Yes.
Mary Lou Beaver,
Yes.
Claire Bloom,
Yes.
Rebecca Wachowski.
Yes.
And thank you all very much for your flexibility. And we'll see
Thank
you next
you.
week on the computer.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much. Bye.
Bye.